Okay.
Hi, welcome. I'm Les Bubka, and you're listening to an accidental podcast or something like that. My guests today are three bastards, but not any bastards, Bunkai Bastards. So, Rob Davies, Andy Kidd, and Brian Bates. How are you guys?
Yeah, we're fine, thank you.
Oh, good. Yeah, very good.
You may notice straight away that I was answering for all three of us.
Well, there's only one leader, isn't it?
Yeah, we haven't decided who that is yet, though.
We're looking for someone.
Can we start with I think Robert is the most advanced from us. Robert, can you start with the introduction and tell us something about you?
Most advanced meaning presumably the one who's lived longest so far.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's good enough. In any given crowd, that does me fine. So, I'm Bob Davis. I am one of the Bunkai Bastards, probably the least bastard of the three, but we'll see how that goes. 62 years of age at time of recording. I first walked into dojo in 1975. I lasted about a month because the guy running the beginner's session was a complete dickhead, and even at the age of 15 I could spot that. I thought, that's not for me. So I gave it a break for a while, went back in 1978 training with Paul Perry at Jinsei Kai up in Watford. And I trained there for a while, did my first couple of gradings under Asano until I dislocated my knee in a training session. And then tried to go back to training too soon afterwards and hurt it again. And then life caught up with me, wife, family, all those things. So I had a break of 20 years from that point and went back to training in classical Shotokan in 1999. And I came up through the ranks doing the standard stuff. I always had an interest in the more practical side. I was always aware of what I was doing, and it was an art and a classical side rather than practical self-defense. And I sort of went outside to various places to get my fixes on that. I first really got introduced through a guy by the name of Jeff Nash, who is now no longer with us, unfortunately. Intervening times, I did a bit of Japanese jiu-jitsu back in the late 1990s. I did a bit of Brazilian jiu-jitsu about 5 or 6 years ago. Not to any large extent for either of them, just enough to give me a grounding in something outside of what I was doing. I went independent from my group maybe 5, 6 years ago now, and I've been doing my own thing ever since then, really. That's me in a nutshell. I'm still doing my own thing. I'm just not sure what my thing is, and I don't think anybody else is either.
That's a big nutshell, Bob. We've only got 2 hours, for Christ's sake.
Well, your chance to make up time now then, Andy.
Yeah, go on,
next? All right. Hi, I'm Andy. Oh, you want some more? Right. Okay. So I started off doing Lao Gar with a friend of a friend who taught Lao Gar. We decided to open a karate club, so we found an instructor, and that was quite interesting. He used to take us to the pub afterwards and wear a small coat over his gi, so he'd walk in with his black belt hanging out the bottom of his coat into one of the rougher pubs in Swindon. That was my first instructor. And all the way through karate that I've done, I've always been looking at it going, this doesn't seem quite right, it doesn't seem practical. So I started inviting instructors to do seminars in Swindon. I invited He Must Not Be Named, I invited Vince Morris, Phil Snewing came down to do Combatives. I went and trained with pretty much anyone I could. Changed affiliations because I had a bit of an argument with the chief instructor. He didn't like what I was doing. Went to another place, went to the TSK with Pete Manning, who was really helpful. But then again, I still wanted to do something slightly different to him, so I left there and joined the BCA mainly because I could be independent and do what I like then, really, to be honest. Met Ian Abernathy, one of his early seminars, and then I thought, oh, that looks good. Invited him to Swindon and been doing that sort of thing ever since. Played with a bit of judo, a bit of aikido, Combatives, Western sword fighting. I'll do anything for a bit of a laugh. And I don't think I'd be doing karate still now if I hadn't changed how I do it. So my main driver is self-protection based karate, should we say, and we can get into a big argument about what self-protection, what karate is later. But yeah, that's where I am now, really.
Excellent. You actually probably don't remember, but we met on one of your seminars with Ian.
We
2008.
did, you came up from Guildford because my daughter was living in Guildford at the time. And that's why I remember, yeah, there's about 6 of you, if I remember rightly.
Well, I was just hanging on with the club who expelled me later, but hey ho. But I marry one of the students, so it's all right.
That's fine.
Okay, Brian. Sorry, I don't have a cake, but you can.
That's okay. Yeah, I've got my tea. I just don't have any cake. So, yeah. So I'm Brian. I'm 47 at the moment. So at time of recording, I started karate. Thanks. Started karate at the age of 9. It was a traditional Shotokan karate club. Kind of did it for a few years. Gave it up in my early teenage years. Did all the things you do as a teenager, and then took it up again seriously at the age of 19. Been doing it ever since. So from the age of 19 to now. In between, I've dabbled in other bits and bobs. So I've done some judo. A few years ago, it's about 8 years ago, quite seriously took up Aikido and Aikido Jiu-Jitsu. So it's all within the same club, just to get a better grounding of throwing and locks and things like that. Probably around the same time, maybe a bit longer. Obviously, I've known Bob for quite a while because I'm married to his niece. So yeah. So Bob's my wife's uncle. Or Bob's my uncle, maybe. I guess.
That's the way it goes, isn't it?
So yeah, it's not yours. Yeah. So through Bob, I've met some dodgy people like Andy as well. So yeah, we both kind of had an interest in the more practical side of karate, and I think he started looking outside the sort of areas that we were training in at the time. Came across some shady characters, yeah, so started doing things like that. For about 1.5 years now, I've been training urban combatives as well, which is quite interesting. So funny enough, I do see a lot of crossovers with that and karate. To be fair, the biggest difference I think is their mindset and their attitude. So I think the movements aren't too different really, but it's the way they train things. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I'd say, yeah, Aikido Jiu-Jitsu, karate, judo, applied karate. I love it. That's it.
So everybody got some influences from outside. I think the cross training is very important. Mm-hmm. So I always start with not always start, but always put that question somewhere within the interview because that's what I mainly do. Could you tell me, guys, what impact karate had on your mental health? Positive, negative, or you don't think about it? Okay, Rob.
Oh, I'm being cued in there. It's an interesting one, that, because when I first started training, when I went back to training in '99, one of the things that appealed to me about classical 3Ks karate was the ability to go in there and switch off. Mm-hmm. So rather than the pressure of work and the pressure of running a family and these sort of things, it was a bit of a refuge in as much as I could go in there and just line up with everybody else. My son trained with me at the same time, which was a different thing. But it meant I didn't have to take any responsibility for anything for 1.5 hours of an evening. Mm-hmm. I could just go in, work physically really hard, not have to think for myself, not have to take decisions for myself. And it was just a bit of a release that way. And it's that combination of switching the brain off and just working physically hard. And that worked really well for me as far as that's concerned. But that was for a while. And what happened then is the balance changed. The frustration of going to the dojo and doing the same thing time and again without it having meaning for me probably made me more frustrated than less when I started going training. So that's when I had to start going outside, because I have this thing in my head that I need to understand the why behind everything. Mm-hmm. I always have done. I'm an engineer by training and by profession. and I need to know how things work, why things work, take them apart, put them back together. And typically when I put them back together, there's a box of bits left over, which I consider that I didn't really need because it still works. And that's pretty much the way I work with my karate as well. So yeah, it was a good thing for me initially because, as I say, it enabled me to take pressure out of my life and just do physical work without being responsible. But that only carried me so far. My nature didn't allow me to stick with it past that point.
I know how difficult. I was laughing about engineering because my wife and my father-in-law are both engineers. So I know. My life is very planned.
Yeah, I'm not one of those engineers. Planning, no, not so much. Just curiosity.
My wife is a systems engineer, so I've got a plan for everything, and everything will goes wrong as well. So let's jump other way, Brian.
Yeah, so I'd say similar to what Bob has said though is when you go to the dojo, you're just able to switch off, and I think that's good. So if you've got any stresses outside, you know, of the dojo, you do forget them for that time you're in there. And I like this phrase of impact therapy. So, you know, I do like hitting things. So if I can't, so during lockdown, I've not been going to the dojo and not been hitting my mates and that. So I've spent a lot of time in the garage just hitting, you know, I've got a punch bag up there. I've just recently got a speedball, which is great. But yeah, I think that's it for me. And I think, and again, something Andy touched on earlier, it's got to be fun. So, and again, if you're not having fun while you're training, you probably carry those issues with you because you're not able to forget if you're not enjoying yourself and having fun. So yeah, I think the dojo is good for me. I say if I can hit things and have fun, you know, I forget all my worries. So that's it for me, I think.
Awesome. Andy?
So much like Brian, I like hitting stuff because it really does take a lot of stress out. When I stopped karate for a while when my daughter was born, my first daughter, and then I realized I needed something for myself. So I went back to karate, and it was sort of like it was some time I had on my own without worrying, because I was only young then and having a young child and all the other pressures of life, like having to work for a living and things like that, which are just terrible. And so some time on my own was great, and it just gave me something I could do myself. I also think that anything that you do that's physically exhausting is good for your mental health. It tires you out, and you can't sit there just worrying. You burn off all that adrenaline and all the worry, and you can get rid of it. Just because I happen to channel mine into karate, it probably works just as well for anyone doing other things. I mean, runners go on a long run when they're stressed. I don't know what footballers do because it's not a real sport, is it? Let's be honest.
No.
Rugby players have impact all the time. That's massively physical. But for me, I like hitting stuff just like Bri. So I've got a punch bag in the garage, a speedball. I've got one of my sons who trains with me, so I get to hit him as well. Yeah, but it really just burns it off. And the reason I can stay, I think, more calm than a lot of people at work who get really stressed about it is generally because I've got an outlet.
I think a point there, Andy, on the back of what you were saying there, talking about you can do any other thing. But for people like us, certainly for people like me, because I was the same all the way through school, I'm not a team person. I can't get involved in team activities where I'm reliant on other people and other people are reliant on me. And this is very much for me a solo activity. Before that, I used to whitewater canoeing, mountain biking, a lot of weight training in my teenage years and early 20s. They were all things, all physical outlets that I only had to depend on me, and that worked well for me. I don't fit well in teams. And I don't know if that's a karate thing or just a me thing.
You've got to find your bag, right? You've got to find what you enjoy, because some people blow off steam by having that team and then going to the pub afterwards as a collective. But yeah, I mean, I'll go on, Brian.
I was going to say, I think you got it spot on though, Andy, as well, saying, you know, just because we like hitting things, like say runners go for a run, they put their headphones in and they're off, they forget about everything else that's going on in the world, don't
that's
they?
Bad self-protection, could I just point out?
It is terrible, yeah, but yeah, I mean, other than karate, I've got guitars in the back, so, you know, that's another way for me to lose myself. I just sit in the back room, you know, and just strum away for an hour or two, and you don't even realise it's 2 hours gone, you know. So if I don't want, you know, if I don't want to hit something, you know, there's my other outlet is just play the guitar. So I think, yeah, it's just having your thing, isn't it? And I think particularly for us, I'd say it is mostly karate. So
yeah, indeed. So I've joined your very expensive website.
It's a rip-off.
Yeah, it is. £2 a month. It's a rip-off.
Less than 3.
Bunkai Bastards, which is focusing on the practical application of karate. I'd have to be honest. I don't have a clue what it is because I didn't have time to look at it yet. Courtesy of my children. It's no rest. Then, could you tell me what's the Bunkai Bastards all about? And for the people who are listening, maybe they're gonna be wanting to spend some money on you as well.
This is going to be interesting, isn't it? Because we've probably got 3 different views here.
That's
Andy,
awesome.
would you like to tell us what the Bastards is about?
Okay, so I think when we started it up, I think the thing that we've noticed, all probably individually and collectively, is that a lot of people will go into karate and they'll go, oh yeah, there's the shuhari model. And a lot of people get stuck in the shu part, the starting part. And they're always looking to someone else to give them the answers. And at the end of the day, everyone should be finally getting to their own karate and being able to do all this stuff themselves. So you see a lot of people, though, I've had a lot of people, they come to Ian courses, they come to courses I put on, they go, oh, I love the stuff you do, I love the stuff Ian does, I wish we could do it in our dojo. And you say, well, why don't you? Oh, well, Sensei won't let us, or I'm not sure how I do it. And you think, well, look at what they're doing and start copying it. It's not that complicated, to be honest. And we think everyone should be trying to go through the shuhari process. And so we decided to put, and we talked about, I don't know when we talked about it actually. Might have been Brian's idea originally, I think, but
a good few years back now.
It was, yeah, it was quite a while ago. I was going to look it up earlier, but
can't be bothered.
I can't be bothered.
But that would have been planning, wouldn't it?
Exactly, yeah. That would have been hard work.
Yeah.
And so, what we try and, one of the things we do in the Bunkai Bastards we think is different to everyone else is we do peer review of Bunkai. So we set a task every month to 2 months, depending on the response to the previous task and what else people are working on. And we say, can you do a bit of Bunkai from this kata? Or here's a problem. Can you tell us how you resolve that? And so people look at it. We want them to send in videos and say, well, this is my idea for this, or this is what we thought. And then the group will review it. Everyone can look at it, play with it, try it, and then come back and say, well, this doesn't work for me because, or this is great because, or have you thought about this? And so everyone's meant to be thinking, everyone's meant to join in. It is like proper peer review, scientific peer review, rather than there's one guy at the top of the tree who says, yes, that's good, or no, that's bad.
And I think that's an important point to make, is that the site is not a come to us and we'll show you our Bunkai. It's not that sort of site. We're not doing that. So
you're telling me that I'm paying you and I have to do the work.
Exactly.
That's a great model.
Is that not the business model that everybody wants?
One good example is I've got so Ian Abernathy came up with this concept for the start of Heian Nidan Pinan Shodan. And I put up something, I can't remember where it was. I said, oh, I don't do it like that, and I think it could be used this way. And someone turned around, well, no, Ian's already shown us what it is. And they were totally closed to anything else because Ian had told them. I mean, I've got great respect for Ian. Ian's a mate of mine. I've known him for a long time. He's taught my dojo a lot. He's a big, hairy northern git. What can I say? But yeah, I mean, so people need to stop being, everyone talks about being open-minded, but very few people are actually as open-minded as they think they are. That's what we want in the Bunkai Bastards.
I was going to say, one of the things about the peer review as well, what he's talking about earlier as well, Andy, is if for example, we were working on Heian Nidan and lots of people put in the same idea, it's like you're all thinking along, you know, on the same path. So generally, if a lot of people are thinking the same thing, it's got to be a good idea, hasn't it? So, unless you're all wrong, of course. But yeah, I mean, it's that, you know, I think the peer review is important. You know, I think, and being able to take it on the chin, as long as nobody's a dick, but being an idiot about it, constructive criticism. But yeah, I think it's finding that common, the principles, common principles within the techniques.
Yeah, and that's another thing about the approach, isn't it? Because people, it's not like a public forum where somebody posts something and lots of people pile in to say, oh, that would never work on the street, or you're talking rubbish, or this. You know, the mindset isn't that. So you learn to be open to constructive criticism because that's what you're exposed to there, rather than being on defensive all the time. There's a lot of good stuff out there by a lot of people nobody's ever heard of, and they don't post it because, I'm sure as you've seen yourself, the moment you put yourself out there in public, there's always somebody trying to tell you why you're wrong.
Yeah.
Nothing to offer in exchange for that, just to tell you why you're wrong.
And
So we wanted to put a safe place for people to do that and practice that.
And that's not just, and again, we don't like people worrying about grades. So some of my best bunkai I've stolen off my students who are way below black belt. They come up with really good stuff. And so in the group, we actually say, you know, just because someone's a black belt or a 5th dan or a 28th dan or whatever they may want to be, it doesn't mean that their idea is better than yours.
Or a Jupiter belt.
Tested or...
Let's just come across a Jupiter belt, I think.
Yeah, I did.
That's another level.
I think that's a huge problem, which you Andy mentioned, that the people treating martial arts as a religion in a way, that when you subscribe to something, you're supporting something, there is a, you know, head focusing on one thing, like Ian Abernathy is a god and nobody else want to say. I'm not saying that Ian is that way because I know Ian very well as well. And I know he's open-minded and open for everything, but the followers, treating stuff like a cult. It doesn't matter who is it Jesse Enkamp or whatever branch you want. It's people are just blindly following, and there's nothing else except that chosen person. I think that's very dangerous. So I'm glad you guys promoting a bit of a different ways, and I will try to get on the website.
Yeah, I mean the other thing is we're trying to encourage people to question stuff as well, because that's the other thing. We had a little chat about that ourselves. Is people are afraid to ask or question Sensei, you know, because it's, I suppose in the old days it wasn't the done thing, but in the group, you know, it's ask questions if you're not sure. We'll either blag our way through it or we'll give you an honest answer.
Well, we'll do what any decent Sensei would do and make something up, and just, you know, people have to believe us because of who we are. No, and this, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, go on. You say.
I was going to say, this is another sort of thing really about the public approach that you see, is that we make a specific effort not to take ourselves seriously and not to take ourselves seriously publicly. So again, people who talk to us feel completely comfortable to call us whatever they want to call us and talk to us on whatever level they want to call us, because that's just the way we project it. We're not trying to be the top of any tree.
Yeah, I come back to that questions from students. I've got a really, really hard time, because my dojo is mainly consistent of the people who came from somewhere else. So I've got mainly black belts. I've got only a few students who are my students from point zero. And they really struggle with asking questions, you know. I can see that they don't understand or don't stop, and they will not ask. But I'm happy and lucky that I've got the 2 people who are asking questions, and their questions are sometimes so silly, but it has bringing my attention to it that I take things for granted. Things which I understand is not necessarily understood by the students. So all the questions are very important, isn't it?
Oh, always. And I think it takes time to get that. I mean, I think all 3 of us in our dojos all have this same encouragement of questions. So in my one, I've got a really open class now, and people will ask questions and they will put things forward even when they're much lower belt, and they'll show stuff. But that's the thing that I instill from people from day one. Because I think one of the things you see in karate a lot, as we've said before, is people won't question Sensei. And they go, you are the god, you know what you're talking about. And instead of like most areas of life where they question it, well, look at Facebook. What do anyone know about anything? Everyone's an expert on everything. When it comes to the karate dojo, no. they don't think, they sort of put their common sense to the side and just do any old shit if Sensei tells them to. He's got a black belt on. And in a lot of dojos, it's not that hard to get a black belt.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Every 3 months, you're turning up and you got it, isn't it?
So just saying about trying to get students to ask questions. I think if like what Andy says, it's from day one, it's quite easy, isn't it? But trying to sort of think about for Les, I guess you just got to ask them frequently. What do they think about it? I suppose sometimes people go, yeah, that's fine. But I think just trying to encourage them to ask questions.
I mean, I often get. I mean, I haven't got a big dojo at all, and I think it's important you've got people to keep your feet on the ground. So, in the Bunkai Bastards, there's 3 of us. In my club, I've got 2 other senior instructors, James and Steve, who, if they don't think what I'm doing is right, they will rip the piss out of me and won't be afraid at all to say it. But for the students, sometimes you'll go, right, we're working on this. You'll show them one idea, go away, play with that, try some different stuff. And then you bring them back to show other people. And then they start getting used to presenting. And then you'll say, well, why are you doing that? And they have to explain it. Even do that with the older kids, because I teach kids and adults separately, just because I can't teach them together. So even the older kids, you'll sometimes get them to try and explain what they're doing more. So they get used to talking in front of people and just generally being able to say stuff without being ridiculed.
So, one day you sat 3 together and you decided we're creating a group. How did you come up with Bunkai Bastards? Did you not think that it might be offensive to people, putting people off? Or did you want it that? Yeah, we're going to have a group and we don't want anybody.
It's kind of working like that, to be fair.
Yeah, it's sort of, it's ended up that way. No, it was always a concern, and it was thought through. We didn't just go into it blindly, but it sort of acts as a bit of a filter, really, as much as anything else. Because if you're looking at genuine self-protection and the things that happen on that side and the things you have to deal with, if you can't get past the name, then you're not going to get past any of the other things we do, or dealing with us, or dealing with genuine aggression. And yeah, I understand that from the classical background and a respect point of view, a lot of people think we're just messing about. But we did spend a lot of time discussing it, and it's closed a number of doors to us. You have to admit that. There were people who won't promote us and can't put us out on their stuff purely because it goes into so many people's inboxes, and not everybody's happy with that sort of use of the language. It's at the tame end of the way we normally speak, I have to be honest, as we'll probably find out as we get more comfortable and the interview goes on. So yeah, it wasn't just an off-the-cuff decision, although it did make us laugh. I have to be honest with that as well.
Yeah, I
Rolls off the tongue.
closed some doors, as you said, but if people joined the group and we were called something else, they would probably soon leave again. So as Bob says, if you can't get past the first name, you won't get past actually meeting us or talking to us or reading anything we post anywhere, frankly.
Is the name having any more meaning to you? There's something behind it, or is just you like the root word?
Well, it depends. I mean, I could give you the martial arts bullshit version, or, as I say, we originally came up with it on that path, but really, if you're looking at the bastard side, it also carries weight and holds water in the traditional or the accepted sense of the word. It's not just a rude word. We're none of us currently the sons of any particular father. So we're none of us part of a bigger family. We're all top of our tree. We have nobody that we feed back to. So effectively, we're on that side as well. We've cut ourselves off. We have no parent.
So literally,
I've also been asked loads of time. I mean, I've got a friend, or we have a friend, he's in the Bastards himself, who we call the Wado snob, because he's very Wado driven. He's very, very good. He knows all his stuff. And he would say to me, what's your lineage? When I first knew him, I said, I haven't really got one. I'm a bit of a bastard, really. And we laughed about that. And it's the same thing. I mean, it's that people who trace their lineage back. Mine's sort of like, well, done a bit of this, bit of that, bit of the other, and I brought it all together, and I'm happy. And I don't think having a official lineage necessarily makes you better than not.
Yeah. I don't have much of a lineage either, so I don't care about that. I see what you say. So you basically done the English version of Word Ronin, yeah, without the master, without the father.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
But again, this is just the English version, as you say.
Yeah.
We're not trying to paint this picture of we belong to this big Japanese or Oriental family. So using the words for it seems a bit pretentious.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I think that's a very good name. It's very catchy, in my opinion. I'm sure you're gonna bring all good characters towards you.
Well, we don't want any of those.
So, yeah. Now, inside of a practical karate, what's your approach to it? So, are you doing lots of law or just the functional stuff, just the bodily fighting, or is that whole concept of self-protection included?
The short answer is, for me, read my book.
You got a book, Andy? I didn't know.
I knew you'd have to get a plug in. You see, this is another thing about the concept of running a web group and getting other people to do the work. It's much like Andy's second book in that respect. And as much as he had a book out, he put another book out, but he didn't write it.
Yeah, I just finished reading that one.
So yeah, sorry, where were we with the question?
Got off topic there. So
that's all right. Yeah, go on.
I think what we really want to do is karate for self-protection. So, but it's bringing everyone along with us, because obviously the Bastards has got people of varying levels, and some people are higher up understanding what that means than other people. So some people are just getting into Bunkai and they don't know all the other stuff, all the soft skills, which is hard stuff to teach. Which is something I've actually been doing for our club in lockdown, which has been really good. We've been doing, instead of doing weekly, getting up and jumping around in front of the screen, we've been having weekly discussions about different topics. And I've given them homework, which they now hate me for. Well, this week, it's all about martial arts films this week. So, but yeah, so it's trying to get everyone on the same, to sort of start understanding different bits of it. And the easiest way, and the thing that gets the most traction at the moment in the Bastards for the peer review, is Bunkai to specific kata. So if we say we want you to show us some Bunkai from MP or Basai or Wonshu or whatever kata you want to call it, and then we get more response. Whereas if we put something out, what was that one we put? Here's a situation, or we put a picture out.
It was just a still picture, yeah, of me with Brian and a guillotine tray. Yeah.
And people find that a lot harder, because it's like, okay, this is not anything we normally do in class. We've got to really think about that. And then a lot of people go, well, I'm not sure, I'll sit back and wait. And so we're trying to get everyone to where they can contribute to anything you put out and go, well, I could think about it, even if I'm not 100% sure. Because that's what we do. We're not 100% sure. We think about it. And then someone goes, yeah, but what about... So there was one interesting one where someone was doing the finger grab, poking in the chest, finger grab. And we were sort of going, yeah, I'm not sure if that's really practical, really that would work. But one of our members used to be a prison guard, and he said, actually, I used that in prison on an inmate who was going to attack me. And we're like, oh, okay then. Well, that sort of proves the concept works. And he used it in real life on someone much bigger and stronger than him. And he's not a small lad himself, to be fair.
I think another thing to point out at this point is that there's a difference between the concept of the Bastards and what we as individuals teach in our clubs. So, you know, it says on my website that I teach Shotokan karate, although that's perhaps getting a bit more variable now. Shotokan karate with an emphasis on self-protection. So I still do basics. I still do the classic kata. I've dropped the prearranged Keons, 5-step, 3-step, those sort of things. So it's only really the partner work that's different. If you came in from outside as a karate practitioner into my class, you would probably recognize 90% of it as being karate. But then that extra 10% is really where we're trying to move people to and what we're doing in the group at large. So our assumption is that anybody that's in the group is already training karate somewhere at a certain level. So we can take that next step. But from the club point of view, yeah, I'm not running a fight club. I haven't got people coming in and all we do is put the gear on, put the pads on and wail on each other. I am Keon teaching classical karate most of the time. It's a slightly odd concept because I have, again, like Andy, I have a very small group, if anything, probably slightly smaller. And my youngest student currently is 52. I did have one who was 45 at one point, but he trained Goju-Ryu as well, and his club moved premises to train night, so he had to move on. And I have lesson plans. I do the normal karate thing, but what will happen is we'll get so far in, we'll do our warm-ups, we'll run through our kata. I'll say, I'd like to work on such and such from this kata, and somebody will ask a question. And what I tend to do in that point is, oh, there's a question there. Well, we could do this, but rather than giving the answer, say, well, why don't we just work on it and see what happens? So that will become the lesson plan for the rest of the evening. We've done our karate stuff, somebody asks a question, and we work on that as a team rather than me as an instructor. All I bring to the party is 20 years more experience than the guys asking the question, but we work it together.
I'd say, as the Bastards, though, what we try and teach, it can be a bit different. When we do seminars, we kind of do have 3 different points of views as well, don't we? So we did, I think the last one, we done, it might have been floors and walls.
Suju was the last one,
okay,
but
right.
the proper formal seminar we did before that was the walls.
We did walls and floors and walls, and we each of us have got different ideas on what we'd be doing, and Andy's kind of well known for his chaos drills, so you know we put all those ideas together at the end of that seminar as well, didn't we? And just made a mental drill out of it, which let's say it's mental. It's not that mad, but I think if you look at it, if you stepped off the mat and watched it, it looks crazy. But when you're doing it, it's actually quite a safe. You're doing it a safe drill in a safe environment. That just looks a bit crazy, but I think, yeah, for our seminars, it is just 3 different ideas approaching a similar topic. Which is
but
good.
With an educated eye, though, if you step back, as you say, if somebody came into the room, they'd think it's just lots of guys fighting. But everything we do is karate skills applied. So
principle based, isn't it? Yeah,
principles are there, the techniques are there. You go through something, you might link it to kata because people like to go to a seminar with a kata label attached to it. You do something like walls and floors, people get very confused. But most of the drills could be linked back to kata. When anybody ever asked, oh, it comes from this, it comes from that. Anything I do, if anybody asks, it comes from Teki. Not because it necessarily comes from Teki, but I can make it come from Teki if anybody asks. It's easy. I can make it come from anything else as well. But, you know, people like it to be linked because, and this is a complete way out there off topic for the question at the moment, but people are learning karate back to front at the moment. You know, this is my thing. So people are learning kata and now trying to reverse engineering them, and shouldn't be working that way. That's not an efficient way to learn karate, but it's what people have got, and they're trying to make sense of what they've spent time doing rather than learning something from the ground up. So it's a bit of a strange balancing act.
That does bring me to go on, Brian. You want to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say I learned a lot of karate when I took up Aikido and Aikido Jiu-Jitsu. So everything they do, they don't do kata, not as such. Everything they do is partner drill straight away. So as soon as we was partnered up doing things in Aikido Jiu-Jitsu, you know, learning a throw, I said, oh, that's kata, or we're doing a lock, and straight away I can see the kata in it. And yeah, if I'd learned the moves first and then learned a way of practicing it afterwards on my own, it's different. Like Bob's saying, we're kind of doing it back to front, I think. So, go on.
I think you do need, sorry.
Go on.
I think it's, if you don't do that, people get confused and you have to reteach them from the beginning again almost. The fact they can see it and then it starts clicking in their head and then they can, and then hopefully they can start doing it themselves. Go, well, if that looks like that, what about this? What's that for? Why do I do it? Surely, and then you can just play with it. But people, so if you've done 4 or 5 years of farting around like that, and you just go, we may as well start again, people won't do it. Whereas if you can link it, like Bob said, to the kata, then people go, oh, right, okay, I see where I'm doing it now. For people who are a bit further down the path, like all of us, we just go, well, we don't really care. If it's an efficient fighting skill shown in a way that makes sense, then it's perfectly valid. And then usually you go, oh, hang on, it does look a bit like that kata as well. So I don't think I've ever done anything that doesn't look a bit like a kata generally.
That brings me to another question. So we all experience different martial arts, and like Brian said, you changed. I changed my way of karate through wrestling, and coming to what Bob said, that teaching back to front, I had a lot of backlash on the community of the famous Facebook groups, because I teach application first or parallel with the kata. So from lesson 1, you are with a partner, and we're doing mostly, for me, most of stuff is throwing, because that's what I feel I like and enjoy. And probably if I didn't start karate first, I would be a wrestler. I never go to karate. But my question is, long way around, how did you change your teaching structure and syllabus? A, because of your influence from the different system styles or sports, and B, to fit with that practical approach. Bob said that he's doing that 15% or 20% on the end of the applications, but rest is okay, like traditional karate. How do you approach that? How did you change and modify the ways you teach? Anybody? Just jump in.
Well, see, I'm reluctant to do it because I'll be accused of talking all the time.
I'll go then. What the hell? So I started teaching 3Ks pretty much like everyone else in the known universe. And as I said, I kept bringing in different people. When I went, so I was in charge of the dojo, and I got to the stage where I could write my own syllabus. It's become a standing joke that the syllabus is always changing. I think it's version 13.2 at the moment. And just as you learn new stuff, you go, right, well, we need to add that in. Where do we put it? Me, Steve, and James have a chat about it. And it just keeps evolving as you learn new stuff, or you change your way you think. You think, oh, this is more efficient than that. Let's start doing it. So it just keeps evolving and evolving. It's almost been static now for about 2 years, I think, which is probably the longest it's ever been static. But yeah, we add in more and more and more. Not more and more, 'cause one of the first syllabus I had was so big, you come to it, you go grading, and that'll take hours and hours and hours. Now, I'll get into another bugbear. All these people who went, oh, I did a black belt, it took me 8 hours of physics. And you're like, no, it didn't. No one can train that hard for 8 hours. It's impossible. You didn't do it. It's in your head. We can come back to that later, maybe. Yeah, so it was big. It was unbelievable. And then you go, right, what are the core skills they need for each level? What is the learning they need to have done? So we've got we've got a quiz part for each grading up to brown belt, then you've got essays after that. You've got books you're meant to read for the higher grades as well, so you've got an understanding of different stuff. And then we do Keon, Kata performance, Kata Bunkai, pad work, grappling and throwing, and sparring. And sparring comes at all the different ranges. You need to know different bits for different levels. But if you try and put everything in, it just gets too big. So, I mean, obviously karate is primarily, for me, a striking art. So striking's the number one thing, and then all the other things add on from that. But to answer your question, yeah, it just comes from when new stuff comes in, we look at it and we see, does it fit into the syllabus? Is it useful? Is it needed for practical purposes, or is that sport orientated? If we need it, where do we put it? Where does it come in the learning? And the same for dan grades as well. So a lot of places dan grades, you get a first dan, and then second dan is learn another kata. Third dan is do some more kata and more sparring. But our dan grades are very separate. They've all got a purpose in their own right, which I can bore people with later if you want or not. Entirely up to you. Someone else could have a chat if they like.
So, yeah, the syllabus for me, I think when I left 3Ks, for me, the hardest thing, it wasn't overly difficult, but it was to drop the 5-step, 3-step, 1-step, because at that point it was disassociating myself with traditional karate. Then I felt at the time, I thought if I drop this isn't karate anymore. But I having feeling it wasn't practical at all. It really didn't serve a great purpose. Teaching the student to step back 5 times is bad practice in my eyes. Better off taking an angle or closing distance and going forwards. So yeah, dropping that was the tough one initially. But similar to Andy, in our syllabus, Kian Shodan will be the first kata. We'll do. Students need to demonstrate applications alongside, so they don't learn bunkai later on as they get a higher belt. They learn with the kata, a bit like you mentioned as well, Liz. So every kata they learn the lessons with the kata. And from day one, students are hitting pads as well. And we kind of sometimes we graduate things as well. So when you first learn, obviously, if you're doing like agyuki, people are listening to this, they're not going to see me doing an agyuki, but I don't know if you're putting it out on. But if you're doing agyuki, you're learning to use 2 hands. So we do it from basic wrist grabs and stuff initially, because it's very low level and people can get comfortable with being at that range. And then you can sort of progress that to lapel grabs, then you can progress it to haymakers. So, those basic blocks, you can do little progressions within throughout the grades. So, yeah, each same as what Andy said. As you progress, you go through throwing, you go through pad work, and my syllabus is probably quite different to Andy's, but there's similarities there with the progressions. So
it comes down to the concepts rather than the content, doesn't it? It's because of what I've already said that I'm teaching what looks like classical karate, but I've also did a video donkey's years back just for internal use, looking at Keon Kata. The very first lesson that the beginner comes in, we have a session, we learn how to step. So it's just stepping Zenko Tsudachi. It's which muscles to use, how to step. We'll add in Gedanburai, down block, and stepping punch, Oizuki, those 3 things. So those are our basics for the very first lesson, and we carry on doing those past that point. And then we'll do Keon Kata, the first 8 moves of, which is classic beginner's fare again. Keon Kata, some people know it as Takioka Shodan. So we'll do that, and up to that point, it looks very much like a standard beginner's karate class. We then have, although it's not realistic self-defense, partner drills that go with that involve getting in close, clash of hands, stripping and using the Gedanburai to drop, getting offline, using a drop step to punch through. And it's very simple drills that look very straightforward, very basic, but there's a lot of concepts of applied karate in there right from day one. So if somebody comes in for their first lesson, they will learn as much as they would have learned in any karate class, but they will have also gone away with a feeling that, okay, I've learned how to do this, I've put it together in this form, and we've actually done something useful with it as well. I can see how that would help me in a real situation. Slightly artificial, but it would still work that way. So again, lesson 1, day 1, that starts to be incorporated. And that happens with all my kata as we go through. Any time we're working a kata, we'll do the kata performance, we'll look at the basics, and then we'll make a partner drill out of it. And I have some standard stuff. And then, because of the relationship I've got with my guys, somebody will say, well, what happens if this, and then we'll do it. And I might find that somebody's got a better idea than mine. And then I'm like Andy or whatever. And I think, well, I'll steal that and I'll use that. And that will now go in the syllabus and that'll be what we do. And it just develops that way. But yeah, I think the point I was trying to make is that it's very much a case of lesson 1, day 1, you start to put those concepts in. So they're not new concepts that you learn later on. The feeling is that everything is linked from the very first lesson rather than being 3 different parts They're just parts of one thing.
Sure. You all said that you are independent. I also prefer to be independent, although under umbrella of British Combat Association, because they don't tell you to do anything. They are happy with if you got a certain standard. For me, being independent is, I don't like politics. I've been involved in few top level organization politics, and I decided I don't want to be part of that. And they're like, I'm not the guy who wants to run anything except my own club. So I try to avoid all the power tripping and search for power and stuff like that. But I would like you to tell me why choosing being independent. Brian, start with Brian.
I kind of get fed up being told what to do, really. I'm a bit of a rebel. So, yeah, I think with my old organisation, I won't name any names, but when I was with them, I could see things that I didn't agree with. And when you start to, like Bob was saying earlier, you start to ask questions, why? And to be fair, I'd done 3Ks karate for a long time before I started asking those questions, why are we doing this? Why, would this really work? So I went independent sort of selfishly because I wanted to do the karate that I was seeing elsewhere. I think Ian we mentioned him earlier, but he was a big influence in the early days for me. So when I started coming across his videos on YouTube and I attended a couple of seminars, I thought I want to be doing that type of karate. So the only way to do that was to become independent, really. So there was no clubs around me teaching that type of karate. So that is the only way. So selfish reasons, really, so I could do what I wanted to do. And saying there wasn't any clubs around me that do that, there still isn't, so I get visitors that drive 40 minutes up to an hour to come train, so you're talking a 2-hour round trip each week just to come and train. Because although the practical or applied karate movement is growing, it's still not that big, I don't feel. I don't, if people are driving 40 minutes to an hour to get to me, it can't be that big yet. So yeah, I did it, and I'm also with I think it was last year I joined the BCK as well. It was after I went with a friend, Jan Drakman. We went up to the BCK headquarters on a Thursday morning and did their Thursday morning session, which was a bastard. they work you like a bitch, but I enjoyed it and had a real good chat with Peter Considine afterwards. He's a lovely bloke, and chatting with him, I just thought, this is where I want to be now. So I'd already been independent prior to that, so I think I started my group Zanshin about 5 years ago. But yeah, it was only I was with another small group just for the insurance purposes, but yeah, joined the BCK last year because yeah, it just seemed the right place. It seemed like a good home to be with. So there you go. Andy.
Who's next? Andy, go on.
But before I waffle on, if we talk about BCA, I always try and do this big shout out to Dawn, because I mean, it's great, but Dawn is the best admin. It's amazing. You write her an email, said, oh, can you do this? She goes, I'm really sorry, I might not be able to do that till tomorrow. And you're like, that's all right, you chill. And then she'll write to me and say, have you done this yet? And it'll be like 3 months later, and I go, oh God, no, sorry. And she'll be like, don't worry about it, it's fine. And I'm like, yeah, it's brilliant. The admin for the BCK is fantastic. Right, so now I've given them a plug. I think the trouble is, much like Brian, there's a type of karate I want to do.
Yeah. And
no one's doing it exactly like I want it done, or wasn't in association wise. And so you end up going, well, if you're trying, so the last one, we have people who were training with us and they train their bunkai, their throws. And when it came to the grade-ins, they go down to the association grade-in and it'd be like, well, they don't need half the stuff you've done. And some of the stuff you are doing is different. And so what's the point, really? I mean, it's nice to have other people to train with, but they're coming back going, well, I didn't do well on my grading because of this. And so why are you teaching us that? And then it becomes, is it more about the grading or more about the training? And they were still more interested in the training. And I want to do what I want to do, so that's why I'm independent.
Awesome. Robert?
Yeah, well, again, I have to be completely honest and say this. It's entirely for selfish reasons. Exactly the same thing. I have very much my own ideas on what I want to do and how I want to do it. And when I first went down that path, I stuck very much to the classical training to a point to make my stuff portable. So anybody who came to me to learn karate, if they then, after doing a couple of gradings, moved on to somewhere else, they would know exactly what they were doing and going somewhere else. And what happened from that point is nobody left. They all carried on doing what they're doing, so they never went anywhere else. So I was teaching them pointless stuff for portability that they were never going to use by training with me. And it's interesting, again, talking about the gradings, because this was one of the things. Guy, probably the only guy I've got who's come with me from the beginning all the way up. At the moment, I think he's 6th Q, thereabouts. But he'd set himself a target as a man who was coming up to his 50th birthday. I think this was his midlife crisis. He was going to go to karate. He was going to get a black belt in karate. It's now been, for work reasons and health reasons, various things going on and timings, probably about 18 months since his last grading. He's well overdue for it and well capable of doing it. And we've had this conversation. Well, we need to, and he's not bothered. He's, you know, the grade is just a thing that'll happen when it happens. This target he had, he still wants to be a black belt one day, but it's become the training that's important to him. And this is what's important to me. So I've dropped out of the system. I don't have anywhere to grade now. I'm a member of an umbrella organisation, again, purely for insurance purposes. Other than that, they have no involvement with what I do. I don't take advantage of any of the other services because I know people anyway. If I want somebody to come in from outside and teach something specific or to look over something, and when I do student gradings, I have a black belt who joins me from outside, who I've trained with. Barry typically comes and sits in on my gradings. So I've got outside eyes, because it's very easy when you sit there by yourself week after week, day after day, to think this is all fine. You need external eyes on something, even if it's only just to say, have you spotted this? Have you spotted that? And you may have done, but you may not. So that sort of covers that side of it for me. And if I want anything else, I can just go somewhere and turn up and learn from whoever, wherever. So I don't have any interest. Personally, I only did the last grading for the sake of form. That was when I had my health issues. It was, okay, well, I could fill in the piece of paper and do that now. Well, I can't do anything else. When I'd originally started training, my target was to get to 3rd Dan, because for some reason in my head, I had it, well, that's the first serious grade. But by the time you get to that stage, you're starting to know something. And that's what I'd set myself as a target. And that sort of drifted. I got there eventually because, again, by the time I'd done my 1st Dan, I said, the training was the training and the gradings just happened when they happened. And I don't have any intention of going any further, so I don't need to belong to anything particularly.
I think that's very important that what you mentioned, that I do the same exactly, that bringing that somebody else from outside of your club, because we all biased, and you know, there's your students and you see them better than they usually are, so it's nice to have or other way around, so nice to have somebody
I can be very picky.
Yeah, and somebody else from the outside and tells you what to improve, what to do, and what mistakes you're doing as well.
Yeah.
And I've got as well few students who I have to force to have grading. I just how you call it, award them about more of a PJJ style, so I don't have a grading as such. But yeah, they're refusing. I have to throw the belts at them and say, come back tomorrow with this one. Don't come back without the belt. My next question is, because you all went practical and you all said that you've been doing 3K. I haven't been with the 3K. My teacher was always kind of a practical way, but kind of on the side of Kyokushin, so more sport version. How did your instructors or teachers took your, you came to them, you said, now I'm gonna do practical ones. I'm sorry, I have to move on. What was the reaction? Have they supported, or they've been not happy? I kind of had a really not sad story with my teacher, because he was, through years, he was very supportive. He always encouraged me to go and do stuff. And unfortunately, due to his health conditions and other stuff, he changed. So he became really close and didn't want to do anything, you know, or don't do this, don't do that. And so I felt like it was an anchor holding me back. And since I decided to move on, he didn't took it very well. But hey ho, we have to do shuhari. So when did you decide it? How your teacher took it, and did you feel liberated? I feel that I can move more freely now and breathe.
Yeah, exactly that for me. Yeah, I think it was a long, tough decision. Probably made easy by Bob, because we was. I'm not blaming Bob for this, by the way, but obviously being we've been. I never started karate with Bob either, so I think it was. I think just through the family. It's, oh, Jackie's uncle does karate as well, so it became a talking point with us. Then obviously we started training together, but I think he was having those itchy feet around the same time. But I think I felt kind of obliged to stay, you know, and although I didn't want to stay, you know, and Bob was like, well, I think that talks reason sometimes, but it's like, well, you're a grown man, make your own decisions, you know. If you want to leave, then leave, kind of thing. He didn't say, I'm not going to influence you either way, but you know, if that's really what you want to do. He was going through the same thing at the same time, probably left for different reasons than I did, no doubt. But yeah, it wasn't taken particularly well from my chief instructor. It was kind of just, okay, see you later. There was no animosity as such, but it just felt like, oh, I've given you all these years and that's it. See ya. You know, there was a little bit of brief contact a couple of years later, but yeah, nothing. So it was almost like cut the chains and moved on. And I did feel, I felt like it was, when I say cut the chains, it did feel like quite a big weight lifted off my shoulders, and like I say, being able to enjoy what I wanted to do then all the time, you know, rather than, oh, there's a seminar next week, I can go to the seminar. You know, this now became my training. So yeah, it was a big weight lifted, and it helped me progress rapidly as well, I think. So yeah, so maybe Bob might want to tell his story, because it kind of links up with mine, Nash. Maybe.
Yeah, there's
we
a couple of different ways.
Pints, didn't we?
Yeah, I'm going to say there's a couple of different ways to look at my leaving, because I've not made any secret of the fact that I've been training around. Say, I probably first started training outside shortly after I'd got to brown belt. So, and I came up through the ranks fairly quickly, presumably because I'd trained before decades ago, but it sort of clicked back in fairly quickly. So I came up through the grades fairly quickly on that side, and I discussed it with my instructor, and this was when I first got involved with Jeff Nash, and he said, oh yeah, I know Mr. Nash. He said, you should go and train with him. So I did that, and I used to occasionally turn up and say, oh, I've been to so-and-so, I've been there. So we had probably 9 or 10 years of me doing that, and everything was perfectly fine and perfectly happy. And then I started to organise some charity camps, which were not necessarily karate related. They were for karate people, but I had all sorts of things that you could come and try. So we had an Aido guy coming in, we had Jiu-Jitsu guys coming in, we had some people teaching Bunkai, we had all sorts of things going on. So you could come for a weekend, raise some money, and just try some different things for a bit of interest. And I'd sort of queried it with him, said, well, I appreciate it's not what we do here. So would you mind if I announced it to the group? Oh yeah, that's fine, that's fine, that's fine. And okay, do you want to do that? I said, no, I said, it's not time yet. Give me a few weeks, and once it's organised, I'll do that. And then we got to the evening where I was going to do it, and I said, do you want me to do this? I can do this tonight. I said, but it's no problem if you don't want me to. No, that's fine. And then I asked him again at the end of the class, oh, no, that's fine, come out. So I went out and I announced it, said what we were doing, and he then came out and stood in front of the class and said, this is a good thing, he said. This is a rare opportunity. You don't often get to do all these things. You know, it's a fine chance to do all sorts of things that you've never done before. But if you do them and decide that you like them, don't bother coming back to me. And then he went on and had a 20-minute rant about saying, you know, how people do this and people do that. And he just described all the things that I'd been doing for the last 10 years and how they shouldn't be done. So I don't know what had changed in that time, or if it had just been sitting there niggling him for a long time. So I thought on the back of that, yeah, it's time to move on. I've been thinking about it for a while because this has lost it for me. I need to make a choice at this point because you put the ball in my court. And so my choice is to move on. Having said that, whenever I run into him after having left, he's always very happy to say hello. We smile, we chat, ask how things are going and the like. We don't keep in contact, you know, we're not bosom buddies, but it was just, there was something in that evening that pushed him over the edge. I really don't know why, because all he had to say up front was, I'd rather you didn't, and that would have been it. That's fine. But no, people are strange. Well, I say people are strange. I only have to look in the mirror to know that.
I was saying on the back of what Bob's just said, though, it's changed the topics a little bit, is about the cross-training thing. I actively encourage my students to do that, though, you know. So, like, you know, you're saying that they can try the jiu-jitsu that was there or the aido. But if I've got students that got an interest in something, you'd always say, you know, go and do it, you know, try it. And there's certain things, I feel like I've got a fairly broad skill set in my karate, but there's things that people could teach a lot better than I can, you know. So one of my students has just started judo, because I can throw, but not as good as judo players, you know. So sent him off. There's a judo club sort of 3 minutes down the road from where we live. So I said, yeah, go there, it's great. So yeah, I think that's one of the problems with more of the traditional classes. They don't like you going anywhere else, just in case you find something that you like. So, you know, I never discourage, you know, I always encourage, you know, if you want to go and do it, go and do it. So.
Brian just took my next question. Thanks, Brian.
All right, sorry, go back to that. Andy can tell you.
Several associations, to be fair. One of the ones, the instructor was one of those guys who said, you can't train with anyone else unless you get my permission. So I obviously totally ignored that. I went and did what the hell I wanted anyway. And then it came to, we started a club up in that association, me and this other guy. We were training them only once a week, so it was on a Sunday morning. And after a couple of months, he said, right, your students ready for grading? And I'm like, no, they're not ready. He said, no, your students are ready for grading. I'm like, no, I don't think they're ready yet. They've only been taught once a week for a month or two. They're not ready. And he said, no, they're ready for grading. And so I suddenly thought, why am I doing this? He obviously just wants the money from grading. He's grading 30, 40, 50 people at a time. And I just went, oh, sod this. I think within about a month I'd left. I just binned it all. I'd been with him for probably 3 or 4 years. And I was like, no, this is stupid. He never spoke to me again, never saw him again. Well, I have actually seen him again. That's a lie. But he won't speak to me now because why would he? He never spoke to me when I was his student. So. And another association, I left the chief instructor from there. Prank called me at 2 a.m. in the morning when I had a young baby. So on more than one occasion. So that was, he was obviously upset as well. So yeah, it seems that this perfection of character stuff doesn't always rub off.
Done? Go, okay.
Listen, the question I already answered then, Liz.
It could just be everyone hates me. I don't know. Could be either.
Well, yeah, there's chances, aren't there?
So everybody talks, most of the dojos and instructors talking about loyalty. Loyalty from the students. Students should be loyal to the club. I've got a bit of a different version of loyalty, but loyalty from the point of view of an instructor. Yeah. So my loyalty towards my students is to make sure they've got as much opportunity to find the martial art or sport they like. So I encourage people to go and look for different things, because I rather have a good friend who is enjoying Aikido, because that's what we meant to do, wanted to do, or is better at it, more enjoying it, than having a kind of mediocre karateka who is not super happy in a club, but that's what he thought he's obliged to be. So my teacher was before we departure was always supportive of going and trying different stuff. That's how I came into the wrestling and BJJ and boxing and other stuff. So Brian answered this question, so he can be muted. Because you are muted, Brian. And then, guys, what you doing? Are you encouraging people to go find something else, or stay with me and don't be loyal?
It depends what they want to do, to be perfectly frank. You know, I have no issues with that at all. If somebody came to me and said, well, I'm interested in doing so and so, well, that's fine. Tell me, because I probably know somebody who's better at it than I am, and I can point you in the right direction. And I'm all in favour of that. I've done that many a time. I had a guy come to me a while back who wanted to come and try things, but he wasn't really interested in what I was teaching, which is fine. So we'd had that. He came along for the evening. We had a good physical session. And at the end of it, I said, this probably isn't what you're looking for. You know, we've discussed it. I said, but I'd recommend that you go and see so-and-so. So, because coming from where you come from, you can just hop on the underground. He's easy to get to. He's down in Covent Garden. He'll be right up the street of what you're looking for. And I'd much rather do that than say, oh, no. I'll cover all the things that you want to do, because it's not true. I'm not going to do that. I do what I do. And if somebody isn't interested in doing what I'm doing, then what's the point? You know? And I want my guys to be as good as they can be. And as good as they can be is probably a lot better than I am, because I'm well past my best before date. I'm too lazy to train that hard anymore. So I've got a lot of stuff going on in there, but past a certain point, they need to go and try it elsewhere. You know, and that's fine. I have no issues with that whatsoever.
Andy?
I'm very similar to both Bob and Brian. I mean, if someone comes to the class, they say, do you do karate? I have a conversation with them. What are you trying to get out of it? And if they're sport karate, or they start talking about throwing, I mean, we do throw in, but not as much as judo people, I'll send them somewhere else. I know most or a lot of people in town who did different stuff. I know Muay Thai instructors, judo instructors. And if people want to do different stuff, I will send them to different places. Because as Bob said, there's no point in trying to keep someone in the club just to have numbers, because they'll just get fed up. And one of the things I really hate is when someone tells you, so in one of those old associations we were just talking about, it was like, you must come to competition, you've got to go to these courses, we've got to visit an instructor, you have to come. I hate that. If someone tells me I've got to do something, I'm like, oh. So I feel in no position to tell other people they must do something.
It would be nice occasionally, Andy, if you told them they must come to our seminars.
Yeah, they don't care about you lot. They've got me.
No,
What
well,
more
yeah.
can they possibly need?
I've got the same issue with my students. Every time I say, oh, there's a great seminar, nobody turns up. It's just like, well, yeah, all right, you go on seminar, I just train.
Yeah, we'll see you later.
Yeah, that's fine.
But just like Brian as well, I mean, I've got a really good Aikido guy, so if I'm teaching break falls and he's there, I just go, Alfie, you're teaching break falls tonight. Because he's better at it than I am. So why would I try and teach something just because I'm the black belt at the front of the class? It's ludicrous. I've got a guy who's trained as a lawyer. So when we're talking about law, Dave, is that right? What would happen there? I use other people's skills. I just head up the class, and as Bob said earlier, I've got more experience in karate than most of them. But everyone should bring their skills to the table and use them to the best of their ability.
It's funny because we've got from time to time Matthew Powell comes into our class. He owns the protection company, so he's doing all over the world. And we're training, and my students on the beginning was like taken back. Or you don't, because if we're doing something from self-protection, I'm not the expert on self-protection. I don't teach self-protection. I do art. That's my field, and I am comfortable with this. I don't do any law and stuff like that. And he's coming, and I said, well, if you want to do self-protection, Matthew, can you teach? And Matthew takes over the class. And on the beginning, the students, especially from traditional background with training, when he's like, you don't afraid he's going to take your students? Well, no, if they want to go. I do my stuff, and I'm comfortable with my stuff. And like you, Andy, said, I use somebody who is better. I don't have an ego bothering me in that kind of way. So I think that's a healthy approach to it, isn't it?
Definitely, definitely. And the students, well, most of mine are grown up, so they should be able to make their own decision. I think he talks about, I think Les, you mentioned it earlier about karate being a bit like a religion, so that everyone will follow the Messiah. They can go and do what they want. They are grown-ups at the end of the day. And I think it's our duty to point them in the right direction to do what they want to do as well, rather than try and keep them. Yeah, we shouldn't.
So I would like to explore something which come up today, because I think that's the really apparent in the traditional karate, more kind of Shotokan way. You mentioned that for your grading you've got the written part of it, because if from Kyokushin side we don't have things like that. So it's all about the skills. There's not much of writing. I probably will fail because I'm dyslexic and English is not my first language, but hey ho.
You're saying a book. That sounds very dodgy.
I've got people. That's why it takes me so long to.
A bit like Andy then.
Andy's got people as well.
Talk
about later offline, Les, how we can get other people to do the work.
Well, that's why it takes me so long to publish a book, because I have to write it, then nobody else understands it. So my wife goes, I know what he meant. She changed it to English, proper English. Then somebody else have to write it properly. That's why it's a nightmare. But going back to written exams, what that gives to your students and what's the idea behind it?
So one of the reasons for it is it gives students a chance to go away and look at a subject more deeply and think about it. And actually, instead of just doing some physical stuff in class, it's like we want people to actually start thinking about stuff. So it's sort of a way to push them to do that. They don't need to be the best English. We've had ones given in handwritten. We've given ones that are typed. We've had some that have far exceeded the word limit we've given them and are just massive, and they've almost become sort of like, mini novels almost, some of the size of them. It gives them something else to do. And some people really, really hate it. But I like that because everyone has got something they hate generally in class. So some people hate when you really mash them physically and it's like exhausting and they're going to collapse and die. They hate that. We have one lady who used to come to us and she loved being pushed like that. She'd be exhausted, but she was super into her fitness. And that didn't test her because she knew she'd try and keep going. But you put that in front of her and she's like, oh God, I don't want to do that. Because karate is all about facing adversity, that is one adversity we can give people who hate it. And Brian's going to disagree with me now, which is one of the great things about.
Well, no, I mean, I don't have a written part to my syllabus at all anyway. So
read is what it is.
No, but that's most of my students can't know. They can't read or write now. We're just knuckle draggers that hit things. No, we don't. It's just not something I've ever thought about doing. But something that I think is good that has come out of this coronavirus thing is that my group. So I was teaching on Zoom on a Monday and a Wednesday. We used to do the last Friday of the month when we was allowed in dojos, and one of the students said, "Oh, can we still do the Friday sessions?" And I thought, "Oh God, doing 3 Zoom sessions a week." So I did it, and we did a physical sort of session, and then actually we said, "Should we have a discussion instead?" And so we started talking about habitual acts of violence. And we ended up talking about all the different types and how you deal with it, and things that happened before these habitual acts of violence, so the pre-threat cues and stuff like that. So going forward, we said rather than doing the physical session on the Friday night, we're going to stay at home and do a Zoom session where we have a discussion. So that just means I get away with not having to read what my students have written, and they don't have to write anything, but we have a chat instead. And I think that's actually something that's pretty cool that has come out of this coronavirus situation for my class anyway. So, but yeah, no written stuff for us.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't have any written component to my gradings either. The way I cover the thinking for themselves thing, because I am teaching a physical skill set, is that once they start getting up to brown belt and above, for me, the physical side is, okay, we've done all these things. You have to have reached a certain level of physical competence and prove technical competence in those things. And for your next grading, okay, this is your kata. I'm just going to show you this kata. We'll learn the kata. I'm not going to tell you anything else about it. Your job for your grading is to take that away, work out what you think that means, and you come back and teach it to me. And that's where the thinking component for my guys comes in, is that here's your kata, use the methods and the things that we've learned on the way through, and my approach to things, if it suits you, use your own approach if you've got another one, but take it away, work it out for yourself, come back and show me what you've got. So no writing, but that's
written. I think
yeah.
most of our written stuff and is more, or a lot of the, and especially a lot of the earlier questioning stuff in grading is more about the self-protection angles and the stuff you can't do physically. So I think first grade, what are Cooper's color codes, stuff like that. So they understand the basics and stuff like that to fit in with the karate. And then we have the physical stuff like that, and that starts kicking in around about black belt level.
Yeah, well, that is definitely more self-protection orientated than karate orientated.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, when I'm grading them on physical karate ability, not on a self-protection syllabus.
So that's where my mix is. So we've all got slightly different approaches, but it fits together well because they realise that I'm right eventually.
But yeah, my syllabus is we're martial arts, so we have a slight lean towards self-protection. But I think, like I say, because when we're in the dojo, we just like to do the physical side, and I think that's probably where Andy doing the written paper is good, because you get them to think if you want to teach self-protection as well, you have to do that, won't you? And doing the soft skills in class, nobody wants to come to class to have a chat, so. That's why, like I say, the Zoom session will be good for that now. And like I say, to me, we won't have to write, and we can lean a bit more towards the self-protection by having the discussions. But yeah, ours is mostly martial arts. It's all physical. So
surely that's the point of the hour in the pub afterwards, to sit around the table and have those conversations.
That is just you and I, though, Bob.
That is true.
Much like Brian, I've got most of my students, people who travel quite a long way. So they don't sit around in the pub afterwards because it's sort of like, well, it's already nearly 10 o'clock. I've got an hour's drive home. I do this twice a week. My missus is going to kill me.
Sure.
I have a horrible, I just have to know what that is in the corner of the picture.
Which one?
Andy's.
Which corner? This corner.
That's the one. Okay.
I don't want to know, mate.
No, I do. I have to.
It's my knee.
Fair enough. No, I trust you.
We don't need to go down there, Andy.
Sure. I'll put my trousers back on then.
No, nobody does that on Zoom.
Next question. So I'm coming across a lot of people using it's traditional methods, traditional this, traditional that. I feel that the word traditional is kind of replacement word for lack of knowledge.
Yes.
So people coming with loads of different approaches, usually going against the anatomy and physiology and say, oh no, that was traditionally done, that's what we're going to do, we are preserving the history. And the same with the use of traditional tools. Are you still using makiwaras and shis, whatever you call them, or you moved on to modern pads, punching bags and weights?
I've never used traditional methods. So, I find weights work well for me for what I enjoy. I say I enjoy it. I lift weights 2 to 3 times a week, depends on my mood. I've got a punch bag, speedball, focus mitts. So it's the modern equipment, and like I say, to me, they serve their purpose well. We had a little discussion on this because Andy was talking. You talked about what's that big sort of paperclippy thing? I don't even know what it's called, but it's the huge sort of iron bar that looks like a big paperclip. You said that there's some exercise with that looked pretty cool.
Yeah, I saw Holland doing some, and I thought, hey, look, that actually looks quite cool. I wouldn't mind one just to play with. Apart from that, generally for me, I use mainly new stuff. I did have a makiwara in an old house, which I quite enjoyed, to be honest. It was something different. And I've got one in the shed. I still haven't put into the garden yet. because there's no room at the moment because we've got other things. But I quite like the Makiwara. It's just something different to do. But it's not as useful as a heavy bag.
Yeah, so I should probably try one before I dismiss it, because I can't see much benefit from it, to be honest. Like I say, I get a lot from a heavy bag, and I get a lot from the speedboard that I just bought and focus mitts, particularly with a partner. You know, so you've got a partner, whether you're doing it for sporting content or whether you're doing a self-protection drill or a bunkai drill with the pads, they're really, really versatile. So it just saves you hurting people,
That's
don't they?
You've got a partner who can actually use them half decently, though. Let's put that.
Yeah,
Some of the shit with the focus mitts is worse than not hitting anything, I think.
I think you'll find someone shit on the focus mitts is making a living doing boxercise classes.
I do agree. That was one of my articles. I had I hate boxercise, and lots of people was not happy.
Well, it's okay as long as you see it as what it is, which is an aerobic activity and a bit of stress relief. It's when people start to think that there's a crossover between that and anything else. And that's true of so many things.
Well, that's my biggest bugbear, isn't it? False advertising and people saying they're teaching something they're not teaching at all.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what you do, and it doesn't matter what the students are doing, as long as they're doing what they think they're doing. You know, there's been a lot of and hanging around the sort of forums and the places we all do. You see a lot of people who are very anti 3Ks karate. And I don't see any issues with it. It's like performance kata and these marvelous bunkai demonstrations. There's some tremendous physical skills there. But as long as people are doing them with the understanding that that's what they're doing and they're not doing self-protection or street fighting or anything, then there's absolutely no issue with that. It's just the little bugbear, and I think it irks us all slightly, is come along to karate, you can do this, and this, and learn to defend yourself, when they do no self-defense whatsoever. It's just taken as if you do all the other things, you'll automatically learn self-defense because it just is part of the thing. And they're all different skill sets, and you just have to be honest about what it is you do.
Yeah, I think that's very important that you have to be honest. You know, lots of people I got emailed because I'm in a young group and posting my stuff, how I do bunkais and stuff. Lots of people going to me and, you know, oh, you do the practical martial arts. Yes, I do the practical martial arts, but I don't teach self-defense. And people are like, what do you mean? Well, I like how people bend, and I like to use the anatomical knowledge to cause pain.
Yeah, I think though a lot of people don't see the difference, though, do they? They think because you're doing practical martial arts, you are teaching self-defense.
And that is a really big point, isn't it? Just to not let it gloss over in the conversation as a throwaway comment, that practical martial arts and self-defense are not the same thing.
Exactly.
There is a crossover, but then there's a crossover also with 3Ks and everything else.
Yeah.
Everything crosses over, but they are not the same.
No.
Yes, you're right. But none of you answered about the traditional side of the stuff, except the equipment.
Okay. Well, no, I don't use any traditional equipment. I've got a freestanding punch bag. I've got a speed ball. I've got weights and general gym equipment. I've got sticks that I hit things with, but no, I've never had a Makiwara. I've never felt a need for any of the other things. Everything I use, I can get out of modern equipment. And I may be missing something, I don't know, but my concept is that with the biomechanics, I can do that in isolation without the Makiwara to give me feedback, because it's about structure. And I did the anatomy qualification, and I understand the basics of that. I can do all those things on a heavy freestanding bag. I can have one of these ones with the weighted base. I can get the alignment right, but the versatility is there to do lots of other things with a limited amount of equipment, which I think if you have to have something specific for everything, and I'm not interested in conditioning my hands, you know, any more than you get from just putting a wrap on and hitting a bag. You know, I don't want callous knuckles. I need to use my hands for all sorts of delicate things.
Yes.
And they are quite delicate hands.
This podcast is meant to be family friendly. Stop it.
No, you've got to watch out for the magic pixel, Andy. You know that.
Yeah. I'll answer the other bit of your question, if you like, Les.
Go on.
The term traditional, you're right. I totally agree with what you said, 100%. People use it all the time for all sorts of weird things to just go, oh yeah, it's traditional, so it must be right. I think
they use it mostly to give an air of legitimacy to what it is they're doing.
Yeah, didn't that happen just recently on one of the forums that we're all on again, or someone has just come up and gone, but we've always done it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so what?
I like that quote. Was it peer pressure from dead people or something like that, wasn't it?
That's
brilliant. Yeah. But yeah,
no,
I mean,
if you're studying the tradition, that's fine, because that's what you want to be doing. But what I do is in no way claimed to be traditional. I did write a blog post about it because Alice asked a question at one of the Bunkai Bashes, didn't she? Are you doing old style karate? And I probably am, in concept, in the way we approach it and the way we teach it. But I make no claims to it being traditional because I have no historical knowledge as to that. This is just the way I teach. And that bit in the middle is the aberration. But I do this new thing, they did this old thing, and there's this bit in the middle. And that may be similar to that, but I don't know.
Yeah, I am finishing most of the arguments that way, because they say, oh, this kata, we don't do it like a traditional. I say, well, I don't have a burden of tradition because I'm a modern karate person. So I don't have to stick to tradition. I respect it, but I don't have to follow it. The other thing which Rob actually bring it up is the anatomy and physiology in instructors, their knowledge of, or maybe a lack of. Because
you're leaning against an open door there.
Because my training is, I used to be a paramedic, so I went for anatomical school and concepts as well, and I find anatomy interesting and physiology interesting as well. But more I see is COVID actually bring it a lot. You can join in those sessions online now for free, and it's just shocking. It's shocking what people do, and lack of knowledge is, I think that should be some kind of legal obligation that you need to know.
Just happens that sitting beside my desk.
Yeah, I've got this other stuff from the other room, but the little one sleeps there, so I'm not gonna jump in there. But what's your approach? You studying anatomy, physiology, or you just go, well, we punch things? Brian gonna be, well, we punch things.
I just punch things. Yeah, I mean, it's quite natural. I mean, yeah, there is a science and a physics to it, isn't there? But it's quite a natural thing as well. I think in the sort of late spring, I just shared a video of me throwing a ball. Yeah, it's just a natural body mechanics, throwing a ball. And then I just held a focus mitt up in front of me and threw a fist at the focus mitt. So yeah, I don't study it maybe as much as I should, but I probably have an understanding through years of training. But no medical background or anything like that in anatomy. So no, I don't study it. So.
No, I've read up a bit about it. I've not any formal study. I have several books hanging around somewhere and things that I've looked at, read. I think one of the ones that I read earlier on was, oh God, what's it called? By Elmer Schmeismer. I don't know if you know that guy.
Yes, I know.
He looks like a tortoise. No offense to listening, but he's fantastically good at wrapping people up into what he calls human pretzels. And he's written a whole book, and it's really quite interesting, all about the anatomy and physiology of karate training and how it's wrong in a lot of cases. Advanced Karate Dome, I think it's called. I'd have to go look at the bookshelf. Yeah,
like I say, I've probably got it up there somewhere. I know I've got a couple of Elmer's books.
Drop me a link. Interesting stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the anatomy training, formal anatomy training I had is very much at the Mickey Mouse level. It was part of my massage therapy course for my qualification for that. But it's something I've always looked at because, again, I'm an old person or an older person. Even when I went back to training seriously, I was already 40, 41. And there were things that they were doing, bad practices that I could feel in my joints. You think, this doesn't work right. It doesn't make sense with the way that the body moves and the body works. So you need to educate yourself on those things, because it's not your job, again, to be causing long-term damage in students just because they're young enough and flexible enough to wear with it. And it's hurting a bit. Well, you're a karate person now, you have to train through that. No. I've always said, even when I was first starting, even with the kids, but if it aches, that's good. You're working hard. If it's a pain, stop. There shouldn't be pain. There can well be aches and things hurting, but there shouldn't be pain. If there's pain, you're doing something wrong. And that's at a basic level the way I've always told people. You know, I buggered up one of my hips trying to do a side kick when the human body physically cannot do a side kick. There's no such thing as a raised kick to the side. Anything above shin level just doesn't work. The anatomy of the pelvis just doesn't allow for it. Yeah. So you need to understand those mechanics, and people don't. They just look at the words and make the shapes, and that's very, very frustrating. Yeah,
it is. Okay, going back to practical stuff. So let's say I am a 3K practitioner or a sports karate practitioner. I want to get into the practice of practical martial arts or self-defense. What steps should I do? Where to look information? What do you recommend from your point of view?
Well, £2 a month.
Which is less than 3.
And buy my book. It's a special lockdown offer at the moment. I make no money out of it at all.
Don't worry, I will put the link. Drop me whatever links you want, and I put in the bottom. I do that as well. I done it for Christian as well. Vedevard.
Honestly, I mean, there's a lot of information out there at the moment, isn't there? So if you was interested in getting into practical applied karate, you know, you wouldn't have to look far really for a quick Google search. Obviously, you have to put your bullshit filters on as well, don't you? You know, to see that looks bollocks. But coming from the 3K background, I didn't, with an open mind, I didn't find it hard to transition to practical karate. You know, so with the right instructors, you know, so Ian, again, talking back to Ian, it explains things really well. He's great at explaining things, in fact, you know, and makes a lot of sense. And if you go past that and think for yourself, because I think that's his whole model. He doesn't want you to be an Ian clone. He does want you to think for yourself. So, you know, once you take those concepts and principles that he teaches you, you can go away and play. You just need another body to play with. And yeah, I think it's quite an easy transition from classical to practical. All you've got to do really is change the range.
Yeah, I think there are issues with that approach, though. It works for us because we are those sorts of people. I've seen so many people out there now who have transitioned from 3K to practical karate, but they haven't transitioned mindset-wise. All they've done is, well, I was following this path, I'm now following this path, and I'm learning a new set of things, but they're not transitioning. All they're doing is, as you said, you mentioned Ian. I went to train with Ian a good few times. I went down to Andy's place, I think it was where I first trained with Ian, but I listened to what he said. And if you listen to what Ian says and learn the concepts of what he's doing, you can very quickly go off and apply those things by yourself. Yeah. You don't need to go to seminar after seminar after seminar. What happens with people I see doing the rounds is that they're collecting drills and techniques. They're not learning concepts, and they're not learning to flow and to apply the concepts or do anything. They're going to learn a set of drills. And I don't see that as practical karate. It's just different shapes. Does that make sense in that context? Of what I'm trying to say? So I think if you're already the sort of person who's thinking, then there's a lot of material out there that you can go to, you can look at, you can go away and play with it. But if you just say, okay, don't do this, go and look at Ian or Vince or Don or whoever, or Andy even, if things are really desperate.
That's Andy Kitt.
Yeah.
Not Andy Allen. Andy Allen's all right. Not
Andy Allen's okay. Yeah, he's fine. That's it. No, it's just those dodgy people down in Swindon. But,
Oh, Les, you haven't mentioned Les. You know, go and check out Les's channel. But
yeah, but he does wrestling. It's not the same thing at all. It's not traditional
I
karate,
think
is
the
it?
thing is, there's two things. One is, what do they actually want to learn? Is
Yeah.
it self-protection? Is it applied karate? Is it a mix of both? Do they just like bending people around in different manners? Or do they want to learn self-protection? But the hard bit, I think, for someone who's coming to it is having a partner or someone to play with. If you're like on your own, which, to be fair, I was to start with, if you haven't got someone to play with, it's a lot harder than if you've got a body to mess about with.
And there's step one with opening your own club.
And then, if you're a black belt, you can just open your own club and get people in and start doing it. Which is why I opened my own. Well, I started going that way because I was like, well, this is what I want to do. Get people in to do that. And if they don't want to do it, go somewhere else, which is what we talked about earlier. But you need another body and you need to be willing to play with it, get it wrong, go, that doesn't make sense, just try it again, different angle, different range, different attack. It is the best thing.
I think another thing to make a point to people is that you don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. People tend to get very zealous when they switch. To say, well, I've had all these years of training, all this is nonsense now, I'm doing this instead. But once you start to understand what you're doing, you will find that probably 80–90% of the stuff that you learned is still valid. It's just what you thought it was and how you approached it that was wrong. The mechanics of what you've learned are right, the moves are right, all that information is useful information. You just need to adjust some things. You don't need to step way back here, start again and do this instead. There's a tremendous amount of crossover there.
A lot of the stuff we learned at 3Ks is really useful in practical karate.
Yeah,
Fundamental
to it.
Power.
Some of the people who probably are starting in practical karate need to be careful now that they get a good grounding in body mechanics and power generation, structure, blah, 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 because a lot of them just go nuts and then they're like, frankly, useless.
I found out in my club as well that the people coming from different stuff, and I teach completely different, and they try to put everything in, I call it draws. So they put their karate draws, my training draw, aikido draw. So I always tell them, you need to take those draws, shake them about, throw on the floor, and mix it all about. So you have to have your own karate, not the copies of we talked about earlier. Don't make copies of other people, just do your own.
You would think somebody would put it on a t-shirt, wouldn't you? It's just movements.
Brian, you start saying something and I interrupt you, I think.
I lost track there. I can't remember that. I do that a lot. I forget to write things on calendars as well.
That's been noticed.
What the future holds for Bunkai Bastards? I know you meant to be doing the Bunkai Bash this year because you invited me to teach. Andy, what's going to happen? Are we going to be back to more seminars, or are we going to stick seminars online? Or
I don't think we're going to be doing any seminars online. Interestingly, I did the one with you, didn't I, for the mental health, Les, which actually, it was really good. It went really well. So the thought of a seminar online, just wondered how it was going to work, but that one did. That was fantastic. But for us, I don't think we will. We've not discussed it, actually. I'm just making a decision now. No, we won't. Fuck it.
Yeah, the problem is that the core of what we do is so dependent on having bodies and contact.
Yeah.
It would be virtually impossible, because the concepts are entirely about feel and physical understanding. So you can't teach that at a distance, because all you can do is make the shapes and you can correct things, but it's all about that connection and putting those things together in the chaos of what happens in a real fight. And you can't simulate that solo.
Even now, the group's at a funny stage as well, because it is a task-based study group as such. Yeah. So at the moment, nobody's going into a dojo. So, you've joined it at a funny time, really, Les, because there's no tasks as such. We tried a couple, didn't we? Did some solo training tasks, and I think we've had. So we've changed things up a little bit in the group, where we did do a couple of Zoom sessions. So we did a couple of solo focus sessions and solo ground sessions, so transitioning between different positions and getting some impact in. And we've had a couple of discussions. So we're due another one as well, aren't we? So at some point, but yeah, I think the future. Well, it'd be yeah, maybe people can't get past the name. Like I say, it's not a huge group at the moment, but it would be good to grow it. It would be good to get more people in. I think the people that are in it, it would be nice if we get them doing what we want them to do, which is the group, the peer review. So a lot of people have joined the group, but they're quite quiet. So they like to see what other people are doing.
Well, yeah, see, that is an issue with a group like ours. And what happens is people expect it to be somewhere as a resource where they can come and look at other people's stuff. So with the current membership we've got, I would say on a good task, we probably, even with the size of the group, we probably only have 8 to 10 active members. People who get involved in the tasks and do stuff in the tasks. Everybody else really is just lurking on the background, not doing that. And the problem is getting new people in. From what we do, the trouble is that all the people we associate with, all the people we know, all the people we converse with online are typically people who are already at our sort of level. So they don't need the sort of things we are doing. But of course, all the people who would benefit from it, who are, it's going to sound awfully arrogant, who are further down the tree and are not at that stage yet, we don't have access to those people because those people are still in the karate machine somewhere. They don't see us.
More advertisement.
Yeah. Unfortunately, again, it's a concept thing, because we're not doing it as a business and we're none of us building an empire and making a fortune. We don't like marketing and we don't like pushing, but you can't get people in unless you do that. And as soon as you do that, you have to start giving people what they want rather than what they need. Again, so immediately you start to compromise what you're doing, because, well, if we want more people, they want to do this sort of thing. Yeah, but we don't want them to do that sort of thing. We want them to do what we want them to do. Well, that's a hard sell.
Yeah, I've got the same thing with my club and stuff. I just my products and products. They're not products, but books and stuff. I just refuse to advertise it. I just don't feel right about advertising and pushing it. I don't like forcing people to do my stuff. So I might speak with Andy about the book pushing and stuff.
Yeah, because Andy's made a marvelous success of that.
Check it out.
Don't go there.
It'll be good to get back to doing the seminars that we did. The last one we done was the nightclub training, wasn't it? Which was fabulous.
The improvised weapons session down at the nightclub.
Yeah.
And the gauntlet. And it was the best one we've ever done by a long way, I think.
That could be it.
The nightclub training is a thing that we've been doing for some years, and it's really good fun because it gets people out of the usual dojo environment and it gets them in what is a real area, and it's generally a bit smelly and a bit sticky. Sean, you don't have to, if you're listening to this ever, mate, you don't have to clean the floor 4 times before we turn up. We really don't care. And it gets them out and it gives them something different to do. And you can, as soon as you start putting bunkai and things in smaller areas and real situations, there's a lot of other things. I can then slam someone's head into that, and I'm too small to it. And it's very, very different. Yeah. And it gives you a different appreciation of stuff to do.
But it is still all karate skills.
It's still all karate skills.
Again, people look at it as a thing in and of itself, and it's not. It's transferable skills, and it's exactly the stuff you do in training.
And I must say, I think because there was a lady we was talking to the other day who said it sounds really scary. It's not. We're not that bad. We don't want to hurt people. So it isn't. Although it's in a nightclub, we put all safety measures in place, and nobody gets injured. There's always a risk to doing any sort of contact. Physical activity, but we try and minimise all the risks, and it was fantastic. The last one was really, really good. I'd almost say well thought out, but it was us three, so
Yeah.
I can't
Well,
say that.
on a personal level, I was certainly winging a lot of what I did on the day. But that's because I know what I'm doing, so I can do that.
And I think the thing is that people do need to train in different situations. Training barefoot in a beautifully lit hall all the time is not good. I mean, one guy once said to me, go and do your kata on a hillside. And I didn't decide whether he just thought I was an idiot and he wanted to get rid of me or whether he was trying to teach me something. But it turns out, if you've got wet grass on a slippery hillside, your Shotokan stances are crap.
Yeah.
And when you start doing grappling in the woods, in stinging nettle beds, it's a different ball game to when you're doing it in the dojo. And you learn a lot of new things very, very quickly. So
yeah, that's all true. Guys, where people can find you when they are looking for Bunkai Bastards or your clubs? So give me some. I'm gonna put links in the description as well. So please send me links to all your stuff because I can't be bothered to listen it again.
No, that's fine. We'll do that. That's fine.
Not a problem.
So yeah, mine's my personal karate page is zanshinkarateacademy.com. So that's my website. I've got a Facebook page, Zanshin Karate Academy, and YouTube, Zanshin Karate Academy Dojo Sessions, and Instagram is Brian Bates Karate. So that's my bits. We'll do the Bunkai Bastards thing at the end, so Bob can do his redfish.
Yeah, well, there is a web page, and I'm in Croxley Green, just outside Watford, so it's northwest London, effectively. Web page is redfishkarate.co.uk, but the easiest way to find me is just search for Redfish Applied Karate on Facebook, because that's where I do all my activity anyway.
I've got more websites than I care to think about, to be honest, but my club website is genjitsu.co.uk, but that's more about the club in Swindon. I've got andykid.com, Andy with an I, spelt like a girl. That's why I grew the beard, in case you were wondering. And that's got my archive of all my Bunkai bites on there, link to my YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. And then obviously for the three of us, there's bunkaibastards.co.uk.
Yeah.
But if you look for us on Facebook, it's pretty easy to find.
Yeah.
If you type in bastards, I think it brings us up on Facebook.
Even if that's only in the comments from other people.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, it was a pleasure to have you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for asking us.
Yeah, cheers, man. Good
talk. Great conversation. I think.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what you can edit that down into that's useful.
I'm not gonna edit it. No, it's going as it is.
Cool.
It takes too much time to edit it. I'm not that good at it. I only got the new program, so I'm still learning. And I think it's more I don't know, more interesting for people if it's not edited. So
yeah.
it's just
well, if you're not editing it, then we probably better say that Brian has got the shiniest head, even though you can't see it.
We polished it.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, exactly.
That makes a pleasant change for me, I have to say. You don't know how pleased I am.
It's the lighting in this room, honest.
That'll be what it is, yeah. It's a lighting issue.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for having us, Les. And keep up the good work with your podcast as well. So I've been enjoying those. Yeah, they've been really good.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's not intended, but it's going very well. So I'm gonna keep doing it. If people are happy, I'm happy.
I'm impressed with your idea of using all your time, like over the kitchen sink, is an excellent idea. I know what it's like with young kids.
Yeah, that's what I can do only. That's why I'm sitting in this room with the headsets on, and you probably can hear a little one in the background crying.
But, maybe this could be the death of your podcast, though, I'm afraid.
We'll see. Hey, thank you very much.
Cheers, Sam.
Cheers. We'll speak soon. Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers, guys. Cheers all. See you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.